Hi, this is Dr. Vicente, and this is a video lecture for week 2 for Educ7101. The theme of this video lecture is Reflections on Education Reform, Instructional and Transformational Leadership. For this video lecture, we will be looking specifically at the work of Professor Philip Hallinger and his article in which he talks about his reflections on educational change. This short video lecture is really meant to be a stimulus and not a substitute for the actual reading. So I want you to bear that in mind. This is a stimulus for you to be able to have a better and deeper engagement with the assigned reading. It is also good for you to remember the 2 readings that were assigned for you last week. Those 2 readings, there were also 3 questions that I asked you to carefully consider. How do the authors define change? What are the barriers and enablers of change? And what is the impact of change? After you've answered those questions, you will be in a better place to be able to tackle this article for this week. Professor Philip Hallinger is a distinguished professor in educational leadership, and this article looks at his reflections on educational change. And he specifically talks about 2 big, powerful trends in educational leadership. One is instructional leadership, and the other one is transformational leadership. I'm not going to talk about the entire paper, but I want to call attention on some parts which I think are really worthy of your careful scrutiny. First is instructional leadership. He defines it as the increasing salience of principal instructional leadership, which happened in the 1980s, was not really from research conducted on instructional leaders, but instead the importance of this role arose from studies that examined change implementation, school effectiveness, school improvement, and program improvement. Scholars who conducted research in these areas on each of these domains consistently found that skillful leadership of school principals really made a difference. That's something for you to think about, right? And the other point that he brings up in this article is transformational leadership. He says that it was first elucidated as a theory in the general leadership literature during the 1970s to the 80s. And then it found a receptive audience in the educational community during the 1990s as part of a general reaction against the top-down policy-driven changes that predominated in the 1980s. It was also a reaction against the directive imagery encompassed in the instructional model derived from the effective schools research. So here he traces the evolution of instructional leadership on the one hand and transformational leadership on the other. In the article, I'd like you to critically look at 2 of the figures that he used, 2 of the images. One, a literal figure, figure 1, is his depiction of what instructional leadership is and the different components and subcomponents that you find therein. I'd like you to look at it and see whether it resonates with what you have experienced in your own context. And then he also introduces figure 2, which is, again, a representation of what he believes is transformational leadership. Different from the instructional model, which was like a connected series of boxes, the transformational leadership model that he theorizes or he proposes is really more like bricks that are built one on top of the other. Again, these are 2 different representations of leadership, and I'd like you to carefully critique this. I think these are very interesting things for you to consider as you continue working and looking at educational change. At the latter part of the article, Professor Philip Hallinger talks about integrated leadership, and he also talked about contingency models of leadership. I would ask you to be very familiar with what these 2 types of leadership approaches mean and how he actually derived these. Again, as you continue looking at this particular reading, it's important for you to remember that this is all within the scope of educational change or transformation. That is really the gist, the main idea, the main theme that this course is trying to transmit. Hope that you are able to engage with the literature in a more critical manner. Thank you.